What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about defensive coordinators. Okay, I'm doing a little research. Told you guys I do a little research. Got a little time on my hands and start looking into Lou Anarumo. And of course, and great that Noah Compton. All right, somebody I follow on Twitter, a great Colts follow, has good information, does good reporting, and it just so happens like as I'm looking up information literally on NFL Pro, watching all 22 film on the Bengals defense, and I go over to Twitter just to pop that open, see what's going on, and I open up. Or I end up seeing and scrolling, and I see Noah Compton put something up here about Colts defensive corner. It's a thread all about Colts defensive coordinator candidate Lou Anarumo. And when you look at what Noah Compton had to say here and the things that he went through and what I found, there are ups, there are downs, there are positives, there are negatives. I think that comes with anything, right? And it's one of those things just about life, right? Everything in moderation, and cause and effect, and the good and the bad, the evil, right? The villain and the hero. It's like there's always going to be that contrast with everything. Right there's always going to be a little bit of that, and it's like, what are you willing to put up with? And obviously during the Gus Bradley era, we couldn't continue to put up with what he wanted to roll out every single week, right? We're going to stay soft on defense and let people walk down the field and just hope that we can stop them from scoring touchdowns. It ended up not working, right? And then when he wanted to get aggressive, we gave the big plays because that's not what that defense is designed to do, right? And so as we sit here, Lou Anarumo, one of the things about Lou Anarumo is that his defense, he doesn't stick to one thing. And obviously Gus Bradley, especially this season, started to change it up more, but it was, as we all know, very cover three heavy, cover three centric, everything kind of based off of that, the rules, the techniques, everything kind of based off of that being the base defense was, cover three looks, different sorts of cover three looks. And because you're playing cover three, those outside corners have to tuck back quicker, right? And you'll see that sometimes in Lou Anarumo. And that's one thing I'm noticing between Gus Bradley and between the film I was watching seems just maybe that style of defense just gives up big plays, right? I looked into some of the big plays that the Bengals gave up, and there were a couple where they blitzed, just sent an extra guy. I don't think there were any big plays on anywhere they sent six or more. Some third and longs, which is I think 3rd and 7 plus is what NFL Pro counts it as, maybe 3rd and 8. Gave up a couple of those when they sent the extra guy. That'll happen with any defense, any competent quarterback, which the Bengals played a lot of. And when you think about Lou Anarumo, right, thinking about what the Bengals defense looked like, and that's what people are going to look at. They're going to look at the stats and immediately go, wow, this guy, what this defense looked like this year. Why would he be a defensive coordinator anywhere? There's a reason he got fired. He's been with the Bengals ever since Zach Taylor went over to Cincinnati. He joined them over there, and that defense, the roster that they inherited was not great, but they were able to get some players on that side of the ball, and it's just the personnel that he's running with, right? Like, they got so good on the defensive side of the ball while Joe Burrow was on his rookie contract. Joe Burrow not on his rookie contract, so guess what? Defense suffers. They're paying offensive linemen. They need money coming up for receivers. Joe Burrow, obviously, in his contract, that they had to let Joe Mixon go because they couldn't afford to keep him around. So with the personnel that he had, right, Trey Hendrickson, he had a guy who finishes with the sack as a sack leader in the NFL this year, Trey Hendrickson, and able to get that accomplishment. And of course, the offense had a bunch of accomplishments, right? Highest passing yards by a quarterback, highest passing touchdowns, Triple Crown winner. Obviously, T. Higgins was incredible this year, and he put up really good stats. So, just overall for the Bengals, when you look at that defense, I just think a lot of their struggles, as I went back and looked at it, a lot of their struggles was personnel. And just looking at Cam Taylor Britt, I mean, was burnt all year long. A lot of the big plays. The thing I was looking at right before I pressed record here, I was looking at the big plays, right, and the Bengals gave up 19 different big plays, which is air yard, right, deep passes, deep completions, I should say, of 20 plus yards. Okay, this is so not all their big plays. There were obviously probably some in the run game, but this is just passing big plays. Gave up 19 throughout the season. And of course, with there being 17 games, you're averaging one a game, and there ended up being it was 11 games, right? So they gave up 19 in 11 games, which means there were 6 games where they didn't give up a big play at all. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, like some of the quarterbacks they had to play, like in terms of making big plays, they got Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, who had 4 such plays for 29, 26, 28, and 27 throughout that game. But then Russell Wilson and Bo Nix, and then Russell Wilson again. So through the season, just of course with the Bengals again, one of the worst defenses in the league, but a lot because of personnel. Like they were, even though they had Trey Hendrickson, it was like Trey Hendrickson's either going to get the sack or they're not getting close, which is why through the season I went and looked at the blitz numbers. They blitzed, I believe the number was 159 times, 156 or 159 times. I believe it was 159 through the season, right? And of course, again, there are 17 games. That's almost 10 blitzes a game, and that's not what it was. Obviously varied from, and it was weird, actually, a discrepancy. Beginning of the season, they weren't blitzing very much, and then through that middle portion of the season, they were blitzing a lot. And then actually, at the end of the year, the Bengals defense actually got better. When you look at EPA per play, when you look at the efficiency from the defense, giving up less big plays there at the end of the year, they were doing better on those 3rd and long situations through the end of the year. Like as I went back and looked at everything and watching the film and looking, play by play, you can look at every single one, like what happened on what play, right? So even the ones I didn't watch film on, I just got a good idea of how the defense performed at different parts of the year. And obviously, one of the problems with the Bengals defense that Lou Anarumo was in charge of was that there's so many young players, right? This is a rebuilding defense. There's so many veterans on the offensive side that take up so much of the cap. So on the defensive side, they have a couple of vets there taking up some money, right? You had Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, Jermaine Pratt, and Mike Hilton, right? Those are 4 veterans on that defense, but a lot of really young players are trying to build through the draft on that defense, and it showed throughout the season. And again, it got better though through the last quarter of the season, and it wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs, but it was good enough that the offense that was playing incredible, the amount of points they were putting up, it was worth it finally. It got to a point the defense had gotten better enough, and Lou adjusted enough to be able to make that defense perform better at the end of the year. That's one of the biggest things with Lou Anarumo, right? As if you go through what Noah Compton had to say here, one of the things that he talks about comes from when he's talking about the scheme, right? And one of the things in here, it's actually a quote, which I believe is from somebody that may have played for him, whatever it may be. But this quote says, he shapeshifts and camouflages his defense based on opponent, presenting teams with a barrage of looks and then adjusting to hammer home the advantage. And talking about, there are other things in here talking about how he's somebody like his in-game adjustments, like he's fine, and that's other things that I've seen about him, like somebody who is okay with making in-game adjustments and actually prefers it. And there's even a quote, maybe it was something I saw in here, but there was another quote somewhere where it's talking about how Lou Anarumo believes that against the great quarterbacks, you have to be able to keep them off balance. It's actually right here. It was a quote for ESPN at some point, not sure when this came out, but it was a quote from Anarumo when he said, whether it's in college or now in the NFL, when you play elite quarterbacks, you just can't give them the same picture, which is exactly what that's Gus Bradley's biggest weakness, is just playing what he wants to play, and hey, we got to execute and we'll win. And it just doesn't work like that. Lou Anarumo says he don't give elite quarterbacks the same picture all the time. He goes on to say, you just got to keep changing it and just attempt to get those guys off balance. So keeping those guys off balance, coming out with multiple looks, not being afraid to blitz. And again, like early on in the season and late in the season, he was only blitzing, anywhere 3 to 5 times during a game, which isn't crazy, right? But the defense, he found a way to make the defense effective at the end of the year without having to do that. And with the pass rush, right, you think about who we have with Latu, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, like coming in, I think Anarumo wouldn't have to blitz a whole lot with the scheme that he presents, right? And looking over everything, and again, looking through the bio just a little bit to know about Lou Anarumo. Anarumo specializes, and again, shout out Noah Compton for this information. Can't say that enough. Just want to make sure I give credit where credit's due. And I just happened to see this, and of course, it pops up in my algorithm as I'm looking for Lou Anarumo. I guess that's just bound to happen. But Anarumo specializes in coaching DBs and would begin his NFL coaching career alongside now Bengals head coach Zach Taylor as the DB's coach. So interestingly enough, both Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo end up being together on the Miami Dolphins. That's where that connection comes from. Worked out for the both of them, got themselves to a Super Bowl. Obviously didn't win it, but a lot of games won. And I'm sure a lot of good times with a generational quarterback in Joe Burrow, and obviously with Jamar Chase. Like the teams that they've had ended up working out for both of them. This says he then served as the Giants DB's coach in 2018 before landing his first DC gig by joining Taylor's first staff back in 2019, right? And then to go on here talking about the scheme, Anarumo's defensive philosophy offers a significant change from that of Gus Bradley's simplistic cover 3 ways. His multiple scheme, which is widely known for its ever-changing adjustments, was instrumental in Cincinnati's Super Bowl run. And the next part of this thread to go on about scheme, talking about his game planning ability, and there are videos to go along with these. Obviously, we're not going to play it and take other people's content in that way. But this is actually the same quote that I already read to you, right? Talking about he shape shifts and camouflages his defense based on opponent, presenting teams with a barrage of looks and then adjusting to hammer home the advantage. Anarumo's defense is, quote, coverage agnostic, is what one person said. And then the last thing here about scheme, Anarumo's ability to limit the NFL's best offenses, and particularly his quarterback, proves that his value in schematic flexibility is key to success in the modern NFL, which can't be stated enough. You have to be flexible on defense. You have to be able to have multiple defenses that you can run. Your players have to be able to execute it as you need to through a game and be able to adjust. Lou Anarumo, like from a perspective of wanting to do the things I want my defensive coordinator to do, Lou Anarumo does that. People say he's really good with his play calling and really good with game planning. That's what's being said about him. Even, the top of this tweet, which I didn't even read, says the 6-year coordinator was once named the mad scientist by his players for his efforts against high-powered offenses. Get to know the game planning savant who isn't afraid to pivot in game as he sees fit. As it comes, as everything that I personally would want from a defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo is that. He's a guy where, as you watch the tape, even though the Bengals gave up a lot of points this year, as I sat here and I watched it, even when they gave up the big plays, for me, it doesn't look like lazy defense. It doesn't look like lack of effort. It just looks like guys their technique's not right. It feels like some guys taking chances that they shouldn't. It feels like guys not being quick enough to react. I think it's more about his personnel than it was about his coaching. Now, there were different things that I saw where it was like, okay, I can see where the issues are. And I noticed through watching a lot of this. At least a lot of the bad stuff that I saw was when it was single high, and somehow, even though you're only single high safety, those seams are getting hit. People just letting guys basically run past them. Well, the safety is choosing which side of the field he's going to cover over top, and the other seam is open, and it provides for a big play. That's something that I noticed as I watched film on the Bengals defense, and even not even in one high. There was some two high that I saw, even like a basic nickel cover two play that I saw, where just going down the seam, and a guy goes past him, and the safety, I believe it was safety, saw a tight end maybe that was threatening the middle of the field, like he was going to come up, or maybe it was a slot receiver, whatever it was. Somebody came up, and then came back, but because he reacted to it, boom, you get the big play up the middle. Like even then that cover two, like the seams seem to be a problem in some of Lou Anarumo's defense. But again, for the most part, a defense that did a pretty good job for as many points as they gave up, as many yards as they gave up. Honestly, for them to only have 19 pass plays through the year that were 20 plus yards in the pass game, like that's kind of impressive to me. So we'll see. And this is actually the next thing. Here we go. Personnel. To continue this thread, personnel. While Anarumo's 2024 Bengals defense was certainly a step back from recent years, the personnel in which he was provided proved to be unfit, lacking a true nose tackle as well as a youthful defensive backfield equal missed tackle galore. And though his unit did rebound late in 2024, which is what I was talking about earlier with the EPA, so they got better through the year, but it was hard for them to stop the run throughout the season. They were another team just like us that was missing tackles. And of course, they have the young secondary. So a lot of people will hear a lot of that right there and say, well, if he has that situation and his defense is so bad, then maybe he's not the right guy. And you could be right. And I'm not going to dispute that at this point. Like there are players on this team that have to come out and be able to prove themselves. But as it sits right now, I just think that it was a step back for the Bengals because of their personnel more than it was their coaching. I actually think he's a good coach now. The numbers, right, statistically, when you look at points per game, as he was a defensive coordinator, they go 2020. Starting in 2019, it's 25th, 22nd, 17th, tied for 5th, 21st, 25th. So, of course, the numbers, as you look at it, numbers don't look great either. Of course, circumstances do play into that. The way these Cincy teams were at different times, right? The Joe Burrow injury, the way the roster was early on. But of course, he gets it good in 2022, as good as it's ever been. And then a lot of guys end up leaving, right? You look at guys that he doesn't have anymore. Jesse Bates, DJ Reader. Those are two guys that were instrumental to this team. They leave, and them being out of the lineup proved massive for the defensive side of the ball. Losing both of those guys hurt them in a lot of different areas, right? Red zone touchdown percentage went from 3rd to 25th to 17th, tied for 5th to 10th to 30th. And then turnovers. Now, this is one thing that no matter what has gotten better in this Lou Anarumo defense. 28th, 27th, tied for 17th, tied for 11th, tied for 11th, tied for 7th. So I think there are certain principles in this defense as you see here. Look at the film, look at the numbers. Of course, again, the numbers don't look good. Circumstances are what they are. Numbers will only take you so far. What I noticed and what I can tell from that turnover number right there is that overall this defense flies around, right? They obviously not always in the right position this year. Again, those ranked 25th, 30th, and then tied for 7th in turnovers. Like they would fly around, not always in the right spots, but effort. That is one thing I noticed watching even this 2024 Bengals defense. Going through the tape that I went through, The effort was there. The try was there. They don't have the personnel right now to be great, at least not with what Lou was trying to do and what he was asking. He is, if we did get Lou, he's going to ask a lot from our corners at different times, right? With that single high look, with teams wanting to run 4 or 5 wide, it's going to stress the secondary, but he's going to play guys. For the most part, he's going to play guys closer to the line of scrimmage. He's going to try to put pressure on the quarterback and make them uncomfortable. We play a lot of good teams next year. If he wants to make, if we want to make quarterbacks uncomfortable, this is a guy we're going to have to consider. Right, and this is a guy that I think is going to be one of the leading candidates. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening, who else gets interviews. We'll continue to dive into it once we hear who's going to be getting interviews. I'm going to continue looking into different guys. Of course, Dennis Allen, got to do my homework on him. I'm sure we'll want to talk to him and see how that could help us. So I'll look into more things. This is more of a lengthy video than I expected, but a lot to talk about here. This is a very important decision for the Colts going forward, figuring out who's the next defensive coordinator, who's taking over for Gus. We've all cried about Gus Bradley in defense for so long. Getting this decision right is going to be massive for what we look like in 2025 and in the future. You got to think, if the defense crumbles and the rest of the team crumbles because of it, or it's just a part of the crumbling, then at the end of 2025, everything's getting blown up. So hopefully we're able to make the right decision. We get a guy that can come in, hold teams to 16 to 19 points a game, and we can come out next year and be a playoff team and get better as a unit and be better than what we've watched over these last couple years on defense. That's for sure. I think we have some of the guys that can do it. I think we need to get somebody that's going to be playing Latu as much as possible. Lou will do that. A lot of the guys we're bringing in to interview will do that. So I think that's going to be huge for us going forward. But again, I will continue to look things up. We'll continue to have more updates on any of this, any updates that happen. I'll have it for you. We're going to have more content like this, talking about different guys that we could bring in for the defensive coordinator position until that happens. And of course, any updates that happen. Chris Ballard's scheduled to have his press conference Friday at 10 a.m. I do not work, so we will be talking about that, okay? We will have a video for that later today. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have notifications on so that you're getting notified for any and all content that we have throughout this offseason. Very important offseason for the Indianapolis Colts. Going to want your guys' opinion. Going to want you guys to stay updated. So again, have those notifications turned on. Of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.